September 3rd, 2018. A silver Honda Accord pulls into the parking lot of Cornerstone Life Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. Behind the wheel is a 22-year-old man named Michael Torres. His hands are gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles have turned white. On the passenger seat lay an empty bottle of whiskey. He had been sitting in the parking lot for nearly 20 minutes working up the courage to move. He was drunk, not stumbling, not slurring, just enough to dull the voice in his head telling him this was a terrible idea. He had been planning this moment for 3 years, but no amount of planning had prepared him for the fear tightening in his chest now. Michael pushed open the double doors and stepped into the sanctuary. The church was packed. Nearly 2,000 people filled the seats, standing and singing along to the worship band on stage. The sound of voices rose together, loud and emotional, echoing off the high ceilings. At the front of the sanctuary, Pastor James Hartwell stood near the pulpit. He wasn't leading the singing, the worship team was, but he stood with them, eyes closed, one hand raised in praise. 46 years old, respected across the state, loved by his congregation. Michael froze in the back of the room, staring at the man he had come to see, the man who didn't know he existed. People turned to look at this stranger moving toward the stage with determined, unsteady steps. He doesn't stop until he's standing right in front of the pulpit. The music fades. Pastor James looks down at him. For a split second, something flickers across his face. Confusion. Then his pastoral smile returns. "Welcome, young man. How can we help you?" Michael's breathing is heavy. His heart feels like it's going to explode out of his chest. He reaches into his jacket pocket. The entire sanctuary tenses. Ushers in the aisles freeze. Pastor James takes an instinctive step back. People in the front rows gasp. In 2018, everyone knows what happens in churches sometimes. Active shooter drills, security training. 3 ushers sprint toward Michael from different directions, but Michael pulls out a folded piece of paper. Just paper. His hands are shaking so badly he almost drops it. The ushers stop, but they're close now, ready to grab him. Michael's voice cracks when he speaks. "My name is Michael Torres." Tears are already streaming down his face. "And you're my father." The sanctuary goes completely silent. 2,000 people hold their breath. Pastor James's smile dies on his face. His wife, Rebecca, sitting in the front row with their 3 teenage daughters, goes pale. The girls, Hannah, Sarah, and Grace, stare in confusion. "Do you remember Maria Torres from Raleigh, spring of 1996? Do you remember her?" Pastor James stands frozen, his microphone still in his hand. "I have the DNA test right here," Michael says, holding up the paper. His whole body is trembling. "I'm not leaving until you say something. I'm not leaving until you acknowledge me." An usher grabs his arm. "Son, you need to leave." "I'm his son," Michael screams it. "I'm his son, and he doesn't even know I exist." What happened next would destroy a church, shatter a family, and expose a secret that had been buried for over 20 decades. Because Pastor James Hartwell wasn't who anyone thought he was. And before this story ends, the truth would cost more than anyone could have imagined. What secret was Pastor James hiding for 22 years? Why did a young man's search for his father end with a public confrontation that would change everything? And when the truth finally came out, why did the people who loved him most have to choose between forgiveness and walking away? Stay with me, because you'll hear a story about a man who built his ministry on a lie, about a son who just wanted to know his father, and about a wife who had to decide how far she'd go to protect her family's reputation. This is a story about faith, deception, and the moment when the past refuses to stay buried. Raleigh, North Carolina, 1996. James Hartwell was 23 years old, fresh out of seminary and full of fire for God. He'd just been hired as the youth pastor at Covenant Baptist Church in the suburbs. He was charismatic, handsome, and devoted to ministry, the kind of young men mothers wanted their daughters to marry. He was also engaged to his college sweetheart, Rebecca Stone. They were planning a June wedding. Rebecca was 22, studying to be a teacher, already planning what their life would look like. 2 kids, a house with a white picket fence, growing old together in ministry. Everything seemed perfect. But that spring, James made a choice that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Her name was Maria Torres. She was 19, a freshman at the University of North Carolina. She worked part-time at a coffee shop called the Daily Grind on Hillsborough Street, right near campus. James would stop in after youth group meetings on Wednesday nights, order black coffee, and they'd talk. If you were watching for the first time, hit on like and leave a comment of where you were watching from. At first, it was innocent. She'd ask about his day. He'd ask about her classes. She was studying nursing. She had dreams of helping people. The conversations got longer, more personal. Maria would save him a table in the corner. Sometimes she'd sit with him during her breaks. James told himself it was evangelism. He was building a relationship so he could share Christ with her. But deep down, he knew better. One night in late April, after a particularly difficult day, a board meeting where older church members questioned his youth programs, stress about wedding planning, doubts about whether he was ready for marriage, James showed up at the Daily Grind right before closing time. It was raining. Maria was wiping down tables, getting ready to lock up. "We're closed," she said, then saw it was him. "Oh, James, you okay? You look stressed." "Can I just sit for a minute? I won't order anything. I need to not be alone right now." Maria let him in. She locked the door behind him, flipped the open sign to closed. They talked for hours about fear, about pressure, about whether they were living the lives they were supposed to live or the lives other people expected of them. And then, in a moment neither of them planned, they slept together. It happened on the couch in the back office, quick, desperate, fueled by confusion and loneliness and something neither of them could name. Afterward, James sat with his head in his hands. "I can't believe I just did that. I'm getting married in 2 months. I'm a youth pastor. What have I done?" Maria was crying. "You should go." James left. He drove home in the rain, his mind racing. He felt sick. He'd betrayed Rebecca. He'd betrayed God. He'd betrayed everything he claimed to believe. He prayed all night, begged for forgiveness, made promises to God, but he never told Rebecca, and he never went back to the Daily Grind. 2 weeks later, he switched coffee shops, started going to a Starbucks on the other side of town. He convinced himself it was a mistake, a moment of weakness that would never happen again. He would marry Rebecca, serve God faithfully, and move forward. The guilt would fade. It had to. On June 15, 1996, James and Rebecca got married. It was a beautiful ceremony at Covenant Baptist Church. Everyone said they were the perfect couple. What James didn't know was that Maria was pregnant. She found out 3 weeks after that night. She sat in her tiny apartment bathroom staring at the positive pregnancy test and felt her entire world collapse. She tried to reach him. She called Covenant Baptist Church, left messages with the church secretary. "Can you please tell James that Maria called? It's urgent. Please have him call me back." But James had just accepted a new position as associate pastor at Lighthouse Community Church in Charlotte. He and Rebecca moved immediately after the wedding. The messages never reached him. Or maybe they did, and he chose not to respond. Maria would never know. Either way, she was alone. Maria's family was traditional, deeply Catholic. When they found out she was pregnant and unmarried, they were devastated. Her father stopped speaking to her. Her mother cried every day. "Who is the father?" they demanded. "At least tell us that. Does he know?" Maria couldn't bring herself to say his name. She was ashamed. She thought if James had wanted to be involved, he would have called her back. Maybe he knew and just didn't care. So she made a decision. She would raise the baby alone. On January 15, 1997, Michael Anthony Torres was born. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. Perfect. Maria was 20 years old, working 2 jobs, one at a medical clinic during the day, waitressing at night. She lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in Durham, but she loved her son with everything in her. She told Michael his father wasn't in the picture. She didn't give him details, just said it was complicated, that sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, and she was one of them, but he was never a mistake. He was the best thing that ever happened to her. Michael grew up asking questions. Why don't I have a dad? Where is he? Does he know about me? Is it my fault he left? And every time, Maria would hold him and say, "No, baby, it's not your fault. And one day, when you're older, I'll tell you everything." Meanwhile, 150 miles away in Charlotte, James Hartwell's life was taking off. He became a senior pastor at age 28 when the founding pastor of Lighthouse Community Church retired. Under James's leadership, the church grew from 200 members to over 2,000. He was featured in Christianity Today magazine. He wrote books about marriage, about integrity, about raising godly children. He and Rebecca had 3 daughters: Hannah, born in 1999, Sarah, born in 2001, Grace, born in 2004. They were the picture-perfect pastor's family. Rebecca homeschooled the girls. They took family mission trips. Their Christmas cards showed 5 smiling faces in matching sweaters. James never told anyone about Maria, not even Rebecca. He buried it so deep he almost convinced himself it never happened. Almost. But late at night, sometimes when he couldn't sleep, he'd think about that night, about Maria, about the coffee shop, and he'd wonder, what if she had been pregnant? What if there was a child out there somewhere? He'd push the thoughts away, pray, ask God to remove the anxiety, tell himself that if there had been a child, Maria would have found him. The fact that she never reached out meant there was nothing to worry about. He moved forward, preached about grace, about second chances, about how God can use broken people. He had no idea that his son was growing up 150 miles away in Charlotte, wondering why his father didn't want him, until September 3rd, 2018, when the past walked through the doors of his church. When Michael was 19, his mother started getting sick. At first, it was just fatigue, then weight loss, then pain that wouldn't go away. The doctors ran tests. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, 6 months to live, maybe less. Michael took a semester off from community college to care for her. He moved back into her apartment in Durham, helped her to the bathroom, made her soup she couldn't eat, watched her fade day by day. One night in the hospital, holding her hand while morphine dripped into her veins, Michael asked one last time, the question he'd been asking his whole life. "Mom, please, who is my father? I need to know. I deserve to know." Maria's eyes filled with tears. She was so thin now, her face almost skeletal. But she looked at her son with so much love. "His name is James Hartwell," she whispered. "He was a youth pastor when I knew him, at Covenant Baptist Church in Raleigh. I don't know where he is now." Michael's heart pounded. Finally, a name. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I didn't want you to feel rejected, baby. He didn't know about you. I tried to tell him, but he never called me back. I didn't want you growing up thinking your father chose not to be in your life. I wanted you to believe it was my choice, that I was enough." Tears streams down Michael's face. "You are enough, Mom. You always were. Find him if you want to, but don't let him hurt you, okay? Don't let anyone make you feel less than you are." Maria Torres died 3 weeks later, on October 8th, 2016. She was 39 years old. Michael was devastated, completely alone. His grandparents had passed years ago. His mother's siblings had never forgiven her for having him. He had no one. But he also felt something else: determination. He was going to find his father. It took him 2 years of searching. He scoured the internet, Googled James Hartwell, pastor, North Carolina, found dozens of results, narrowed it down, called churches, left messages that were never returned. And finally, in August 2018, he found him. Pastor James Hartwell, senior pastor of Cornerstone Life Church in Charlotte, North Carolina, married to Rebecca Hartwell, 3 daughters, Hannah, Sarah, and Grace. Best-selling author, conference speaker. Michael stared at the church website photo, at James's smiling face, and for the first time he saw it, the resemblance, the same nose, the same eyes, the same smile. That was his father. Michael's first instinct was to call the church, to set up a meeting, to do this the right way. But then he thought about it. This man had a whole life, a family, a reputation. Would he even believe Michael? Would he care? Or would he just deny everything, call him a liar, threaten to sue? Michael needed proof first. He watched the church's social media, waited for an opportunity, and then it came. In late August 2018, Cornerstone Life Church announced a free health and wellness fair for members, staff, and the community. Partnering with local hospitals, they were offering free blood pressure checks, diabetes screening, and basic health assessments. The announcement said, "Volunteers needed. Come serve and get your own health checked while you're at it." Michael drove to Charlotte. He walked into the church's volunteer orientation, filled out a form with a fake last name, and said he was a nursing student wanting to gain experience. They put him on the team collecting saliva samples for a dental health screening. On the day of the fair, September 1st, 2018, Pastor James walked through with his wife and daughters, laughing about finally getting his health checked. When he got to Michael's station, he smiled warmly. "What's your name, young man?" Michael's hands were shaking as he handed him the collection kit. "Marcus, sir. Just need you to swab the inside of your cheek for 30 seconds. "Easy enough." James did the swab, dropped it in the tube, and moved on. Michael labeled it carefully, slipped it into his bag when no one was looking. 2 weeks later, the results came back from the private lab. 99.9% probability of paternity. James Hartwell was his father. Michael sat in his apartment in Durham, staring at the results, tears streaming down his face. His whole life he'd wondered. Now he knew. But knowing wasn't enough. He wanted his father to acknowledge him, to see him, to know he existed. For days, Michael debated what to do. Should he call, send a letter, show up at his office? Every option felt wrong. Too easy for James to dismiss, too easy for him to lie. And then, one night, after too many drinks, Michael made a decision. He would confront James publicly, in front of the whole church. He wanted witnesses. He wanted his father to be forced to tell the truth, to claim him or deny him in front of everyone. On September 3rd, 2018, Michael bought a bottle of whiskey, drank half of it, and drove to Charlotte. He walked into Cornerstone Life Church during Sunday service, and he told everyone who he was. If you're still watching, drop a comment and tell me, should Michael have confronted his father privately first, or was the public reveal the only way to get the truth? Let me know below. The sanctuary erupted. People were gasping, grabbing their phones, recording. Ushers surrounded Michael. Pastor James stood frozen on the stage, the microphone still in his hand, his face drained of all color. Rebecca stood up from the front row, her hand pressed against her chest. "James?" Her voice cut through the noise. "James, what is he talking about?" James couldn't speak. He just stared at Michael like he was seeing a ghost. One of the elders rushed to the stage and took the microphone from James's hand. Everyone, please, we need to remain calm. We need to handle this matter privately. Service is dismissed. Please exit calmly." But no one moved. 2,000 people stood frozen, watching. Michael pulled away from the ushers. His voice was breaking, desperate. "I'm not crazy. I have proof, DNA proof. Maria Torres was my mother. She died 2 years ago. She told me about you before she died." At the name Maria Torres, James flinched. It was small, but Rebecca saw it, and she knew. She knew her husband was about to confirm that this young man was telling the truth. Security finally escorted Michael out. He didn't fight them. He'd said what he came to say. The rest was up to James. In a back office, away from the congregation, James sat with Rebecca and the church elders. His head was in his hands. The DNA test results were on the table in front of them. Elder Marcus Washington picked up the paper, read it, and set it down carefully. "James, is this true?" James couldn't look at them. "I don't know. Maybe. There was someone before Rebecca and I got married. Just once. I never heard from her again. I didn't know there was a child." Rebecca's voice was ice. "Who is Maria Torres?" James finally looked at his wife. 22 years of marriage, 3 daughters, a life built together, and he'd been lying the entire time. "She worked at a coffee shop in Raleigh, spring of 1996, right before our wedding. I was stressed. I was scared about getting married, and I made a mistake. One night. It happened once, Rebecca. I swear it was only once." "Once was enough," Rebecca said quietly. Tears were streaming down her face, but her voice was steady, controlled. "Once was enough to create a child who just walked into our church looking for his father. I didn't know."
"You didn't know because you didn't want to know." Rebecca stood up, her hands shaking. "You moved to Charlotte right after our wedding. You changed churches. Did she try to reach you, James? Did she call?" James was silent. "She called, didn't she? And you ignored her. You ran away. You built this perfect life and pretended that night never happened." "I prayed about it. I asked God for forgiveness." "You asked God, but you never told me. 22 years, James. We stood in front of people and wrote books about marriage, about honesty, about raising children in truth. And you've been lying to me since the day we got married." Elder Washington cleared his throat. "We need to verify the DNA results. James, we need you to take another test. If this young man is telling the truth, we'll need to address it." "What does that mean?" James asked. "It means you may need to step down, at least temporarily. The congregation needs time to process this." Over the next 3 days, the church was in chaos. The video of Michael's confrontation had gone viral. News outlets picked it up. Pastor's secret son revealed in shocking church confrontation. TMZ, local news, Christian blogs. James agreed to take another DNA test through the church's attorney. The results came back the same, 99.9% match. Michael Anthony Torres was his son. The elders called an emergency meeting with the congregation. Over 1,500 people showed up. James stood at the front, his face pale, his hands trembling. "I need to confess something to you. 22 years ago, before I married my wife, I had a relationship with a woman named Maria Torres. It was brief, it was wrong, and I never knew that she had become pregnant with my son." The sanctuary was silent. 3 days ago, my son walked into this church. I didn't know he existed until that moment. I have since verified through DNA testing that he is telling the truth. Michael Torres is my biological son. Gasps, whispers, phones recording. I have sinned. I have failed my wife, my daughters, and this congregation. I kept this secret not because I knew about Michael, but because I never dealt with the sin that created him. I buried it. I moved on. I told myself I'd been forgiven,
but I never faced the consequences. And now my son has had to grow up without a father because of my cowardice." Rebecca sat in the front row with their daughters, all four of them crying. "I am stepping down as senior pastor, effective immediately. I will be taking time to work on my marriage, my family, and to get to know my son. I ask for your forgiveness, but I understand if you cannot give it." James walked off the stage. Half of the congregation stood and applauded, tears in their eyes, choosing grace. The other half sat in stunned, angry silence. Within a week, over 400 families left the church. Rebecca filed for legal separation. She moved with the girls into her sister's house across town. And Michael? He got a call from one of the elders. "Pastor James would like to meet with you, if you're willing." Michael said yes. November 12th, 2018, 2 months after the church confrontation. Michael pulled up to a small house on the east side of Charlotte. It was James's new place. After the separation, he'd moved out of the family home. This rental was modest, nothing like the pastor's residence he'd lived in before. Michael knocked on the door, his heart pounding. James opened it. He looked older, tired, like he'd aged 10 years in 2 months. "Michael, come in." They sat in the living room. It was awkward. What do you say to the father you've never met? What do you say to the son you never knew you had? "I'm sorry," James said finally, "for everything, for not being there, for not knowing, for building a life that didn't include you." Michael nodded. "My mom tried to tell you. She called the church." "I know. I found the old message logs. The church secretary wrote down that Maria Torres called 3 times in June 1996. I never got the messages. I'd already moved to Charlotte." James's voice broke. "But even if I had gotten them, I don't know if I would have called back. I was running. I was ashamed. And that cost you a father." They sat in silence for a long moment. "What was she like, your mom?" Michael's eyes filled with tears. "She was amazing. She worked 2 jobs to take care of me. She never complained. She never made me feel like I was a burden. She told me I was the best thing that ever happened to her. She sounds like a better person than me. She was just a person, like you. She made a mistake too. But she owned it. She raised me. She didn't run." James absorbed that. "You're right. And I'm sorry." Over the next few months, they met regularly. Slowly, carefully, they built something. Not quite a father-son relationship. Too much time had been lost for that. But something. A connection. James introduced Michael to his daughters. Hannah was 19, Sarah was 17, Grace was 14. It was strange for them at first, this brother they never knew existed. But they were kind, they asked him questions, they tried. Rebecca remained distant. She wasn't ready. Maybe she'd never be ready. But she didn't stop James from building a relationship with Michael. James had stepped down from Cornerstone Life Church, but he found work as a counselor at a Christian rehabilitation center. It was humble work, quiet work, but it felt honest in a way his pastoral work never had. He was trying to rebuild his life with truth this time. And then, on March 20th, 2019, everything changed. James was driving home from the rehab center. It was raining, a heavy, relentless rain that made the roads slick and visibility almost zero. He was on Interstate 77, just outside Charlotte. A semi-truck hydroplaned in the northbound lane, lost control and crossed the median. Head-on collision. James Hartwell died on impact. He was 46 years old. Michael got the call from Hannah. She was sobbing so hard he could barely understand her. "There was an accident. Dad's gone. He's gone, Michael." Michael drove to the hospital in shock. This couldn't be real. He'd just started to know his father. 6 months, that's all they'd had. 6 months after a lifetime apart. It wasn't enough. At the hospital, Rebecca was there with the girls. Her eyes were red and swollen. When she saw Michael, something in her face softened. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry you didn't get more time with him." The funeral was held at a small church, not Cornerstone Life, which was still healing from the scandal. A few hundred people came. Some from the old congregation, some from the rehab center, some from James' past. Michael sat in the back. He wasn't listed in the obituary as a son. The funeral program mentioned James's wife and 3 daughters, but not him. But when it came time for people to share memories, Michael walked to the front. His hands were shaking. His voice was unsteady. "My name is Michael Torres, and James Hartwell was my father." The room went quiet. "I only knew him for 6 months. Most of you knew him longer. But in those 6 months, he taught me something. He taught me that it's never too late to tell the truth, that owning your mistakes is harder than hiding them, but it's the only way to really live." Michael's voice broke. He wasn't perfect. He made a huge mistake. He hurt people. But he didn't run from it in the end. When the truth came out, he could have denied me. He could have called me a liar, but he didn't. He took the test. He claimed me. He chose me even though it cost him everything. Tears were streaming down his face now. "I forgive him, and I hope he knew that before he died." The congregation was silent. Many were crying. After the service, Rebecca approached Michael in the parking lot. "He loved you," she said quietly. "I want you to know that. In the last few months, he talked about you all the time. He said meeting you was the hardest and best thing that ever happened to him." Michael couldn't speak. He just nodded. "I'm sorry I wasn't kinder to you," Rebecca continued. "You didn't ask to be born into this mess. You were just trying to find your father, and you deserved better than what you got." "You deserved better too," Michael said. "I'm sorry for how I did it, for exposing everything like that. I was angry. I was drunk. I just wanted him to see me." Rebecca's eyes filled with fresh tears. "He saw you. In the end, he really saw you." They stood there, 2 people connected by the same man, both grieving in their own ways. 6 months after James' death, something unexpected happened. Rebecca called Michael, asked if he wanted to come to dinner, just him, her, and the girls. Michael almost said no. It felt too painful, too awkward, but something made him say yes. He showed up at Rebecca's house on a Saturday evening in September 2019, the same house where James had once lived, where his half-sisters had grown up. Hannah opened the door. She was 20 now, in college. "Hey, Michael, come in." The dinner table was set for 5, a place for him. They ate in awkward silence at first, passing dishes, making small talk about school and work. And then Grace spoke up. She was 15 now. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure," Michael said. "What was it like, growing up without him?" Michael set down his fork. "Honestly, it was hard. I always felt like something was missing, like there was this hole I couldn't fill. I'd see other kids with their dads at baseball games or school events, and I'd wonder what I did wrong. Why wasn't I enough for him to stay?" "But he didn't know about you," Sarah said softly. "I know that now, but when you're a kid, you don't think about logistics. You just think, my dad doesn't want me." Rebecca wiped her eyes. "I'm sorry, Michael, for all of it. It's not your fault. I know, but I'm still sorry." They talked for hours that night, about James, about Maria, about forgiveness and what it means to be a family. "Do you hate him?" Hannah asked, "for not being there?" Michael thought about it. "No. I'm sad about what we lost, all those years, but I don't hate him. He made a mistake and then he spent his whole life trying to be better. I think that counts for something." "Do you think he would have told Mom eventually if you hadn't shown up?" Sarah asked. "I don't know, maybe, or maybe he would have taken it to his grave." Michael looked at Rebecca. "But I'm glad I came, because now you know, and now I know I have sisters." Grace smiled through her tears.
we're glad you came too. Today, Michael is 26 years old. He graduated from nursing school, following in his mother's footsteps. He stays in regular contact with his half-sisters. They text, they meet for coffee, they're building something. He visits Rebecca on holidays. It's still awkward sometimes, but they're trying. Cornerstone Life Church has a new pastor now. The congregation has slowly rebuilt. The scandal is still remembered, but it's no longer the defining story of the church. And every January 15th, Michael's birthday, he visits two graves. First, his mother's, Maria Torres, the woman who raised him alone and loved him fiercely. Then, his father's, James Hartwell, the man he only knew for 6 months, but who changed his life forever. Michael brings flowers to both. The truth is, this story doesn't have a clear villain. It has broken people making broken choices. James was wrong to run from his past, but he was also trying to protect the life he'd built. Michael was right to want to know his father, but his public confrontation destroyed lives. Maria was brave to raise a child alone, but she could have tried harder to tell James the truth. Rebecca had every right to be angry, but she chose grace in the end. So here's the question. If you discovered a secret that would destroy your family but give you the truth you've always wanted, would you expose it? Is the truth always worth the cost? And what about James? Was he a hypocrite who deserved to be exposed? Or was he a man who made one terrible mistake at 23 and spent his whole life trying to be better? Could you forgive someone who lied to you for 22 years? Could you forgive a father who never knew you existed? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Should Michael have confronted his father privately instead of walking into that church? And if you were Rebecca, could you have forgiven James? And if you thought this story was intense, wait until you see what I have coming next. Don't forget to comment, like, and share. I'll see you in the next one.